Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another Rookie Card Collector 123 video. In today's episode, we're going to continue our look at Negro and Winter League baseball memorabilia. Many of these items come either from Negro League games in the US or they come from Latin American countries, including Puerto Rico, Cuba, Mexico, Dominican Republic, and Venezuela. So today we're up to episode 7 of this review. We started back in the early to mid 1950s, looking at various Negro League and Winter League pieces. Currently, we're up to 1947. We're working our way backwards towards the turn of the century. So today we're going to look at some programs, postcards, real photo postcards, original Type 1 photos, and several of each of those. So should be a real interesting episode. We've got a few Hall of Famers that we're going to see in there as well. So the first one we're going to take a look at today is this one is a two-player postcard. It's a real photo postcard. Almost looks like a snapshot photo with the bigger border at the bottom. This has Julio Rojo from 1947. Rojo is in the full uniform there. Rojo was a catching great in the Negro Leagues in the early 1900s. At this point, he's a coach slash manager. He spent probably 30 plus years in professional baseball between the U.S. Negro Leagues, overseas, primarily in Cuba. Like I said, Rojo was a catcher, outstanding defense, decent hitter, but known primarily for his defensive work. He's there with a teammate who's not identified here. So, real photo postcard from Cuba, circa 1947, and picturing Julio Rojo, one of the catching greats of early Cuban baseball. Next to them, we've got a Type 1 original photo here. And this is Hank Thompson, or Henry Thompson, who would go on to some Major League Baseball fame. Played for the New York Giants during the time frame when Willie Mays came up there. Thompson spent a number of years in the U.S. Negro Leagues, was a first and third baseman. I believe played some outfield. Good power hitter. Also hit for a pretty good average. Known mostly for his offense. And like I said, some MLB time. So Hank Thompson, original photo. It's 1947. Can't really make out the uniform here. My guess is it's probably in Cuba. Next up, we have a 1947. This is a team photo. This is actually from the U.S. Negro League, so it's the New York uh, New York Cubans team photo. And this image has three all-time Negro League greats, including a Baseball Hall of Famer, Minnie Minoso. The other two great players were Luis Tiant Sr., the father of Luis Tiant Jr., who would star in the major leagues in the 60s and 70s, and Silvio Garcia, who was an all-time great ball player from Cuba and star outfielder, fantastic hitter, played on some of the top Cuban teams ever. So Minoso, Tiant, and Silvio Garcia all pictured on this 1947 New York Cubans Negro League team photo. You can see the image is taken in front of the scoreboard. It looks like in the background of the stadium there, and a real nice image. The clarity isn't the best in the book here and in my copy, so probably can't make out who the players are here, but the original image is a Type 1 photo and would be crystal clear. So New York Cubans, 1947. Next up, we have a 1947 Negro League All-Star Team photo. And we've got some notations at the bottom here. This is the Western team. So similar to how the Major League Baseball had a American League and a National League squad for the All-Star game, the Negro League All-Star game consisted of the East versus the West. And their All-Star games tended to be the biggest event of the year for them. And oftentimes attendance at the All-Star games for the Negro Leagues would top the All-Star game attendance for Major League Baseball. So these were super popular. Oftentimes they were held at Comiskey Park in Chicago, the same Comiskey Park where the White Sox played. This one has a number of notable Negro League players. I'm going to read them off. Again, here the image is not going to be clear enough for you to identify players, but the original photograph would be. So this one has the West Ball Club. Frank Duncan was the manager. He was an all-time great catcher in the Negro Leagues. Larry Brown and Jim Taylor were coaches. They were both star players earlier in the decade in the 20s. So this 47 All-Star team included Buddy Armour, Dan Bankhead, Chet Brewer, Carlos Colas, Piper Davis, Gentry Jessup, Sam Jethro, who played in the major leagues with the Braves, Milwaukee Braves, initially the Boston Braves, Herb Sewell, Goose Tatum, who played for the Indianapolis Clowns. We're going to have a better look at him in a few minutes. Quincy Troop, all-time great Negro League catcher and possible future Hall of Fame candidate, and Art Wilson. So all those players pictured on here, 1947 West Negro League All-Star Squad team photo. And you can see how packed the stands are there behind the team. And the last photo on this page is going to be, this is from Cuba again. This is the 1947 Marianao Baseball Club. Marianao is one of the 4 professional Winter League clubs that played in Cuba during this time period, during the 40s, 50s. This one features 3 stars, 2 actually National Baseball Hall of Famers. So we've got Ray Dandridge included in the Marianao Club, as well as Minnie Minoso. So those are the 2 Baseball Hall of Famers. And Adolfo Luca is one of the coach / managers of the team. Long-time Cuban great, was a pitcher in the teens and 20s, and then spent many years managing other clubs, both in the U.S. and in Cuba. Luca pitched for the Cincinnati Reds during the 19 teens, one of the first great Cuban pitchers in the U.S. Okay. Next one we're going to look at is going to be a very familiar face to everybody, I think. This is going to be Hall of Fame great Larry Doby, second African American player in Major League Baseball after Jackie Robinson. Came up in 1947 to the Indians. Here he's pictured in his Newark Eagles uniform. So this was 1947, early in the year, prior to his MLB time. Type 1 original photo. Doby smiling there with a bat in his hand, and the stadium in the background. So Doby spent, I believe, 3 seasons with the Newark Eagles. He was one of the younger guys when integration came to Major League Baseball. He was one of the still fairly young guys that had not already spent a good part of their career yet. So he still had many good years ahead and had a fantastic career with the Indians. And of course, in the National Baseball Hall of Fame now. Next up is Jose Fernandez. He was another guy, kind of like Adolfo Luca. Spent many years in Cuban and U.S. baseball. Fernandez was in the Negro Leagues as well as Cuba. Never played in the major leagues. Fernandez is shown here on a real photo postcard from Marianao, which was again one of the Cuban Winter League teams in 1947. Fernandez was a middle infielder, good hitter, good defensive player, and even more well known for his managerial abilities. once his playing day is finished. And up here we've got another Marianao from Cuba image. This one has one ball player, and then it looks like it's got some executives probably giving some sort of award out. And the ball player is Minnie Minoso, the Baseball Hall of Famer. This is going to be several years before his major league days with Chicago and Cleveland. So Marianao, 1947, Minnie Minoso there. Okay, next thing we're going to look at is another 1947. You'll notice the logo in the corner here, Kellogg's Corn Flakes. So this is a Cuban postcard series, actually put out by Kellogg's Corn Flakes as a sponsor, which was kind of surprising when I noticed it because, they kind of have a U.S. affiliation, American affiliation, and these are Cuban players. But anyway, this is Lazaro Salazar. He was a pitcher and hitter, kind of a two-way guy like Martin Diego. Great player, not at the level of Diego, but one of the top Cuban stars during the 30s and 40s. Here he's dressed in his Almendares uniform, which is another one of the Cuban professional league clubs that was around during the 40s and 50s. So Lazaro Salazar, real photo postcard, and the Kellogg's Corn Flakes logo on it. Next one here is a really interesting one. I think you can make out the image pretty good. This is a program or scorecard for a Negro League game, a U.S. Negro League game in 1947. It says official scorebook on it. And amazingly, the image on here is actually John Henry, better known as Pop Lloyd, who was the great Negro League shortstop from the late 1900s, meaning like 1908, 1909. He played all the way through the mid to late 20s as a player and then had some coaching after that. So this shows Pop Lloyd in 1947. So obviously it's like a commemorative photo and meant to represent the great ball player that he was. So a programmer scorecard. You can't see the inside here, so we don't know if it's unused, if the game has been scored in there. But a nice image of Pop Lloyd on a 1947 Negro League scorecard. Okay, the next one we're going to look at is another one of those Kellogg's Corn Flakes postcards from Cuba. Again, this is Adolfo Luca, the Cincinnati Red great pitcher from the 19 teens and 20s. Here he's during his managing days, approaching 1950, and a long historic career spent with numerous years in Cuba coaching, managing after his playing days were over. And the last item we're going to look at today is a really interesting Negro League item. So this is 1947 Indianapolis Clowns postcard. And they made a few different ball players in this season for the Indianapolis Clowns. They were sort of a traveling showmanship type of ball club, kind of like the Harlem Globetrotters were in basketball. The Indianapolis Clowns were sort of similar to that on the baseball side. And one of their star best players was a gentleman named Goose Tatum. He was a first baseman. So he's pictured here in sort of a cartoonish image with his face superimposed on it. Some similarities to the 1952, the recent Hank Aaron postcard with Indianapolis that sold for 6 figures. This is Goose Tatum with the traveling Indianapolis Clowns team, and another real photo postcard type of image there. So that's going to wrap up today's episode on Negro League memorabilia. Everything we looked at was from 1947 today. We had a number of Cuban items, a number of U.S. Negro League items, a number of different Hall of Famers. So lots of interesting stuff. We'll continue the series again next time with episode 8, and we'll be moving back probably towards 1946 for that one. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you have a great day, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.